Oh, hey guys, I hope you're having a good day. Riding season is almost here, and I got a little modification to do to the TW200, so let's go ahead and get this started. So this is a custom-made 3D printed switch holder made by TW200. This one has the 3 switches and then a cutout on the side for a USB charger and or a voltage display. This one came with the 3 switches that have blue LED indicators, and they kind of just are pressure fit in there. It's also got some 3M adhesive on the side to help it stick a little bit better. It also came with a Scotch-Brite pad and a couple of washers. He also sent me 2 of the 2-switch versions without the USB cutout, and a 2-switch version with it. I'll be installing this version on my TW200, and I think I have a use for each one of these switches. This didn't come with the switch holder, but it's just a double USB charger with a built-in voltage display. And there is quite a few different types of these, but they're all pretty similar sizes. And you can get ones that just have one USB without the voltage, or I've even seen them that have a built-in switch up top, which is kind of cool. And this one has a water-resistant cover. I actually have another one of these that's a little bit different. This one actually has a momentary on-off switch. However, I would not use this one hooked directly to the battery because this is just a momentary on-off switch, and the problem with that is it's always going to be drawing a small amount of amperage, so it could kill your battery if it sits for too long. And as you can tell, the threads don't go all the way through, so you'd have to find a way to possibly glue it in if you used one like this. This one has threads that go all the way through. That way you can lock it into place. I got the one that I'm going to use hooked up to my power supply, and it's exactly 14 volts, powered on. And as you can tell, the voltage is off a bit. 14.2 versus what it actually is 14. So that's a little bit annoying, but this thing was fairly cheap. But it is pretty cool how you can see it through the cover. Here's the other one, and when it's powered, nothing happens until you hit this momentary switch. And as you can tell, this one is a lot more accurate. And also, just a side note, you can use the momentary switch through the cover. I went ahead and drew up a little wiring diagram. I find doing this just makes things a lot more simple before you go and try to hook everything up. And obviously, this is not the only way you can wire something like this up. There's a lot of different ways you could do it, but this is just how I'm doing it. Here's the battery on the bike. We'll start with the positive side, and that just goes through a fuse on the SAE connector that's already there. And then it goes through that all the way to the front of the bike where we're going to hack off the old USB device, and that's going to go to a switch. And this isn't an exact representation of one of these switches, but it's the basic idea. It goes right here to one of the positives on the switch, and it doesn't actually matter which one. And then right now it's open, but when we close the switch, it'll allow power through here to our USB device and power that up. And then from the negative on that, it'll just go back to the battery. Pretty simple. Back to the switch, this is the LED indicator right here. And it just shares voltage with the positive sides of the terminals. And it actually disconnects along with this part of the switch. And through the LED, it goes to a negative terminal. The 2 silver colored terminals are the positives, and the gold one is actually the negative for the LED. You technically don't have to use the LED if you don't want to. It'll still work just fine without it. But you can actually get switches without LEDs as well. The negative side of the LED will just share the negative pin for the USB device, and then it'll go back to ground. Just for a test, I have it hooked up on the power supply, exactly like the wiring diagram. We'll go ahead and supply 14 volts. Right now the switch is off, and we'll power it on, and we got an indicator light, and the voltage meter is powered on. And when we turn the switch off, there'll be no current flowing through the system whatsoever. I personally like doing it this way just so I can check the battery voltage really quick without having to turn the bike on. And I probably won't forget to turn it off because we got that little indicator light. and the voltage display. Okay, to install the USB/voltage device, I'm just going to use a little bit of hot glue. There. Make sure it's straight up and down. All right, we'll flip it around. Put a little more hot glue in these gaps right back here. And then I'll screw on the locking ring. Nice and tight. And you don't have to use hot glue. I just think it would probably keep it from loosening up over time. This is my old USB/voltage display device that I've had on here for quite some time. It's just got an on and off switch. It tells you the voltage, and the on and off switch is for the USB, which goes in here. However, it is kind of cumbersome to try to plug in a USB through all these lines. It would be cool to have the USB sockets up top. This still does work with no issues. I've used the USB a few times. It definitely comes in handy, and I actually powered my Christmas lights with this. However, one issue that I have is water gets in through this on and off button, even though it's like a little rubber thing over it. And this USB display behind the little glass actually fills up with water, which is pretty crazy that it actually still works. Before I do this job, I'll go ahead and remove the seat and the front fairing. Okay, here we are at the battery, and this is the same lithium battery that I've had for like 5 years, still working great. And this SAE connector was actually installed by the dealer for a trickle charger, and it just connects to the positive and the negative side, and the positive goes to a fuse, and then to this connector, which goes up to the front. Usually when you install something on a battery, or if you're doing electrical work that is connected directly to the battery, you always want to disconnect the negative side of the battery. But since we're just going to be dealing with this SAE connector, we can go ahead and just pull out the fuse to make sure nothing gets shorted out. And it's just a 7.5 amp. Just pull it out with some pliers. Next, I'm just gonna pull off my old USB device. And it's just got that 3M super Velcro stuff. Hopefully this will just pull off of here and won't give us too much trouble, so we don't need it anymore. How convenient, it took all of the adhesive with it. I'll just use my Climb wire cutters and crimpers to cut this off. Be aware, if you cut both of these wires at the same time with that fuse still in there, it will blow the fuse. And if there's just a wire going to your battery with no fuse, it could get pretty violent, so keep that in mind, and it could damage your battery or melt some wires, possibly cause a fire. Since that fuse is out, we're nice and safe. I'm just gonna throw this out. Next, I'm gonna see if I can split these apart. There we go. Pull them apart to about there. I got my automatic wire strippers. Strip off a little bit. I'll just go ahead and twist the strands together. These wires are not marked whatsoever, and we got to figure out which one is positive and which one is ground. I got my multimeter set to continuity. The easiest one to find will be the ground. It's grounded to the frame of the bike. If we hold one of the test leads to one of the wires, it doesn't matter which one, and then touch the other one to something metal on the bike, and we're not getting anything. Let's try the other wire. And it's beeping, so that means we got continuity, and this one is the ground. I'm just gonna wrap a piece of black electrical tape around the ground just so we can remember. The switches and the USB power supply uses spade connectors. However, you can see that they are different sizes, unfortunately. This size, which is a little bit bigger, is a lot more common, and it's a little harder to find the smaller ones. I did get a set of female and male spade connectors that come with the 3 different sizes: 2.8, 4.8, and 6.3. There's a specialized crimper for them. And these actually are the same style of crimp that's used in pretty much every automobile for the pins on all of the connectors. So definitely not gonna have any issues. I'm gonna go ahead and make some small jumper wires for the ground to power the indicator LED. I'll go with 2 and make one a little bit longer, so that way we have an extra ground to connect to the other switches later on. I'll go ahead and strip all 4 ends. Sometimes these automatic wire strippers don't work too well. Sometimes they work perfectly. Some shielding is a different thickness. All right, next we can try to twist all these together. I'll use a 6.3 spade connector that'll fit on the USB charger. And this one is just a regular barrel type. However, I'm going to pull this little blue thing off of there. Oh yeah, that's exactly what I want right there. These Klein crimpers have a non-insulated end, which has got the little pointy thing. And we'll just crimp that down. I'll just crimp it on both sides. Give them some good tugs. Make sure they're on there. Now we can go ahead and remove our electrical tape. For the shorter end, I'm going to go ahead and trim it up just a little bit. It'll lay right into this 4.8 spade connector crimp. And these come with insulating sleeves, so be sure if you're using these to slide it over. And of course, guys, there's many different ways you could be doing this. That's pretty nice. It gives it some stress relief, and it crimps the insulator extremely well. It's not pulling out of there anytime soon. I'm going to take an adhesive lined heat shrink and just line it up and cut a little piece off. And I don't want to cover this whole thing with an adhesive lined one, just the crimped part. And it'll just give us a little bit of stress relief with the adhesive. I'm just going to use regular heat shrink to cover the top part because I don't want to gum up the spade connector. Next, I want to extend the positive wire so we're not stretching it too far around this way. I'm actually getting these extra wires from my van, from parts of the wiring harness that I removed after I deleted the interior. The van and the TW200 will become one. So these wire gauges look to be about the same, and I'm assuming they can handle 7.5 amps at the very max. I'm just gonna use these non-insulated barrel connectors. This is an adhesive lined one. Slide it over, make sure it's nice and centered, and we'll just shrink that down there. That's pretty good. We'll let that cool down. Now we got another one of those small 4.8 millimeter spades ready to go. Man, that works so well. And of course, I totally forgot to put on one of those covers. That's okay, guys. I'm gonna use some non-adhesive lined heat shrink to just slide over here. Try not to knock over your box of heat shrink, because I did that one time and it literally took me like an hour to pick it all up and reorganize it. And we can just throw a little bit of non-adhesive heat shrink over this one. Next, let's just make a little jumper wire from the switch to the positive side of the USB device. These ones stripped out just fine. One side we'll do a 4.8 millimeter spade. Throw some heat shrink on there. It smells like birthday cake candles. For the other side, we'll use a 6.3 millimeter spade. And the reason I'm not using the new spade connectors that I got is because they're kind of set up for, oh my goodness. It's because the bigger ones are kind of set up for a larger gauge wire. So I'm just gonna use one of these. Since they have a small barrel style crimp, I'll shove that guy in there, crimp it down with my old trusty Klein crimpers. And a little piece of non-adhesive lined heat shrink. Throw a little bit of hot glue on this guy so it doesn't fall down. I kind of like the heat shrink better. So I actually picked up a pack of different colored switches. I'm just going to use a red one because it's better for your night vision. Before we hook it up, we can go ahead and just brush a little bit of dielectric grease on the ends of all these connections. Don't need a whole lot. And just like the wiring diagram, we'll start with the positive that goes to the switch, and this is the smaller end. You may need some pliers to kind of help clamp them on. Oh, my bad, this is the jumper wire that feeds the USB, but this is the power from the battery right here. Here's the negative for the indicator LED. Alright, now we can pop that. I totally put it on the wrong one, my bad. Hold on, let me move it over. There we go, that's much better. Next we can throw on the negative for the USB and the positive. You probably don't really need to because it's a ground, but I'll just throw a little bit of electrical tape around this guy for later. Next we can just clean up the instrument panel a little bit with included Scotch-Brite pad. This will help the adhesive stick a little bit better, but it will scratch it up a bit, so keep that in mind. And then I'll use a alcohol prep pad. While that's drying, I'll remove both of these screws. Look, I got an actual JIS screwdriver. So much better than Phillips. Not sure if these little washers are really that necessary because they're not much bigger than the screw head. Screw them through the bracket just a little bit. Remove the backing for all of the adhesive strips. Line it up. Try not to let that adhesive stick on there too much until it's actually ready. Screw them down. Make sure that adhesive isn't quite sticking until you get it all the way down. Might have to pull it off a little bit. Nice and snug. You don't need to go super duper tight. And then once you got it where it needs to be, you can just push that adhesive on. And that is pretty much it. Next we can just pop that fuse back in. And now we can put the bike back together. And let's see if it works. Check that out. 13.5 volts, not exactly accurate. And I think this cover may help it be a bit more water resistant compared to the switch on the last one. I also have some waterproof covers for these specific switches, and I may put those on once I finish everything. And Richie Arnold also sent me his new custom light bar for the TW200. So the auxiliary lights are probably gonna go in the middle. I may use a different color for those. And then the last one I'm gonna use for grip heaters. And I actually got a special switch that will work just for those. It's for a heated seat, but it's basically the same circuitry. Right, let's make sure the USB works. And I got both plugged in, one to my flashlight and one to my phone. Flashlight's charging and the phone is charging. I can't wait to install everything else, but anyways, I will catch you guys next time. Peace out.